Welcome to Part 3 of this module on regulatory research. Here again are the goals for this module. Part 3 of this module will focus on the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations, or eCFR. As noted at its website, the eCFR is an updated version of the Code of Federal Regulations, but it is not an official edition of the CFR. The eCFR is a compilation of the CFR and any amendments to it as published in the Federal Register. As mentioned earlier, there is no print equivalent of eCFR. Let's take a look at this completely online resource. It has some nice features such as this agency list link. Using agency list, you can obtain an overview of all the regulations administered by a particular agency, such as the Food and Drug Administration. Alternatively, you can view regulations by title. As we know, Title 21 contains regulations related to food and drugs, so that title is likely to be the most relevant to our inquiry about our client's acai berry drink label. Let's look again at the food labeling regulations under Part 101 that we saw earlier at the FDA website, specifically Section 101.14. Navigating the eCFR is easy when you know the title and part numbers. Note also how current the eCFR data is. It is usually current within a few days of the date that you were looking at it. In fact, eCFR provides access to the most current regulatory text available. In contrast, when we look at the text of a regulation in the CFR via FDsys, it is only current as of the CFR revision date, and we must update our research with the LSA and Federal Register. Click on the Part link to see the table of contents. As mentioned earlier, the Table of Contents feature is very important for seeing the regulations in context. At the end of this Table of Contents, we see again the authority statement, which references the statutory authority, as well as the source information for Part 101 that we saw at the FDA website. If we take a look at Section 101.14 again and scroll to the bottom of the text, we will again see the source information for this particular section, which allows us to trace the history and the development of this regulation in the Federal Register. Browsing is the easiest way to find a regulation when you have its citation. If you do not have the citation to a regulation, a simple search may be a good starting point. You may want to take a look at the search tips in order to come up with the best search possible. For example, the asterisk is the wildcard symbol that you can use to retrieve all forms of a word such as definition, defined, or define. There is no requirement, however, to put phrases in quotes. Let's try a simple search in Title 21 with the phrase health claim followed by an asterisk. This search will pull up both the singular and plural of this phrase. We retrieve 116 results with this simple search. A few more than we would like to browse. Fortunately, it is possible to refine the search. When you select that option, your search automatically becomes a Boolean search. Note that the phrase we initially used now appears in the section field. The section field includes the text of the regulation. Other fields are available as well, such as section heading or number. By entering the term definition in the section field, this time without an asterisk, we can refine our search and retrieve only 5 results, including Section 101.14. In addition to browsing or running a simple or Boolean search, it is also possible to search by proximity in eCFR. Proximity searching might be a useful alternative, especially if you are unfamiliar with the fields in this database. In addition, searching by proximity allows you to increase the chances of finding relevant search results, because the chances are higher that your search terms are related to one another. Let's try a search in Title 21 again for the terms that we used in our prior searches. Health claim followed by an asterisk within 80 characters of definition. In fact, we might want to start out with a broad search by choosing 120 characters between our search terms instead of the default setting of 80. Let's now run our search. Note that even with the broadest setting, this search only retrieves 2 results. How could this be? We know that Section 101.14 contains all of these search terms in close proximity, so the failure of this search to retrieve that section must give us pause. We must remember that not all search engines are equal. The search engines of most free databases are not as powerful or reliable as those provided by commercial databases like Westlaw and Lexis. Also, there may be little research assistance or support like that offered by those private companies. Sometimes it is necessary to run several searches in a database and assess the results to see how well the searches worked. This search history link provides a record of any searches you ran in eCFR. You can thereby analyze your search results. However, this kind of assessment takes time, which is another reason that browsing may be more efficient in many instances. Unfortunately, the eCFR search engine is not quite as reliable as that of other online databases. Just remember these words of advice. Researcher, beware. Now that we have explored browsing and searching for regulations in eCFR, let's click on the Browse button to go back to the eCFR homepage and see how eCFR makes even the most recent regulations available. The major advantage of using eCFR for regulatory research is currency. eCFR is updated daily and includes amendments as soon as they become effective. We'll leave our client's health claim issue for a moment and take a look at another regulation in Title 21 of eCFR to see how this currency makes a difference. Let's test the currency of eCFR by looking for a very new regulation, Section 511.3 of Title 21. Section 511.3 adds definitions to Part 511 on new animal drugs for investigational use. As you may recall from Part 2 of this module, we found this regulation in the monthly LSA for May, while updating our regulatory research in FDsys. This new section appears here in the eCFR, but not the CFR, because it was published in the April 30, 2012 issue of the Federal Register, after the April 1 CFR revision date. Note that the source information includes a reference to the April 30 issue, which confirms the currency of eCFR. Next, let's take a look at another regulation which has been amended recently, but the amendment is not yet effective. This time we'll leave Title 21 and find the OSHA regulation on head protection at 29 CFR Section 1910.135. Note again the source information at the end of the regulation, and also the link to a later amendment at the beginning of the text. When you click on this link, you will see this additional information regarding the amendment, including when it was published in the Federal Register and when it becomes effective. In addition, there is a link to the actual text of the amendment. By clicking on this link, we can see the text in PDF format. Note that we have now been taken to a different website outside of eCFR. We are now accessing the Federal Register via FDsys. By clicking on the back button, we can easily return to eCFR. Because eCFR is so current, it can save you time, as you shouldn't need to use the updating tools that we discussed in Part 2 of this module on FDsys. In addition, any amendments, if in effect, have already been included in the regulatory text, so you don't need to piece together the complete text from separate sources like the CFR and the Federal Register. Remember, though, that the text of a regulation in eCFR is not official. For the official authentic text of the regulation, we must use FDsys, which was covered in Part 2 of this module. We also saw that there are some weaknesses in the searchability of eCFR, specifically proximity searching. Note, though, that eCFR is due to change in the near future. Soon it will no longer be available via the GPO Access platform, which has been replaced by FDsys. Hopefully eCFR will continue to improve. Stay tuned for further developments. Hopefully you now have a better idea as to the pros and cons of using agency websites, FDsys, and eCFR. You may even want to create a comparison chart of these resources for future reference. Often there is a trade-off between currency and reliability. You may want to consider other factors too, such as how easy it is to browse or search within the particular resource. Does it provide good tools, shortcuts, and help information? Ideally, you can now pick which resource to use, depending on your research priorities, or use all three resources together as efficiently and effectively as possible. If you need further guidance, please see Jamie Summers' excellent Administrative Law Research Guide. It is available via the library homepage or at this URL. Please also feel free to contact a reference librarian for assistance. This concludes this module on using free government resources to research federal regulations. Please return now to your LS1 course website and answer some short questions on what you have learned about regulatory research. Happy researching!